You're listening to Physician Non-Clinical Careers with John Jerica, episode 268, Achieving Personal Success by Writing and Self-Publishing a Novel. Welcome back, Non-Clinical Nation, to this week's show. Before I introduce today's guest, I have a request. If you enjoy this podcast, please support it with a small monthly or one-time donation. It only takes a minute to do that. Simply go to nonclinicalphysicians.com/donate and discover how you can keep the podcast going through a very modest one-time or monthly donation. Next, let's thank our sponsor, the University of Tennessee, which offers the longest running and most highly respected physician-only executive MBA in the country. It's produced more than 700 graduates, and for some career pivots, you really need that MBA. The Haslam College of Business at the UT was recently ranked number 1 in the world by Economist magazine as the most relevant executive MBA program. And unlike most others, the UT Pemba only takes 1 year to complete. And since you'll complete a company project while working on your MBA, you'll also quickly demonstrate the value of the degree while you're still in the program. Graduates have taken leadership positions at major healthcare organizations and have become entrepreneurs and business owners. If you want to acquire new management and business skills and advance your non-clinical career, then you should contact Dr. Kate Ashley's office at 865-974-6526, or you can use our handy link at nonclinicalphysicians.com/physician MBA. Now, Dr. Debra Blaine is a family physician who's been practicing for over 30 years. She began writing fiction in earnest several years ago and published her first book called Code Blue, The Other End of the Stethoscope in 2019. Debra's been on the show twice before, and she returns to announce the release of her new book and to explain how she published it, self-published it this time. Beyond the Pillars of Salt is a sequel to her second book called Undue Influences, and it picks up about 10 years after the end of the story in that book, or 10 years in the future, basically. I encourage you to read all of her books, but you really can start with her most recent, even though it's a sequel, because they all stand on their own merit. And I would suggest doing that because it's going to help her out, because it's the most recently released and it will help generate some buzz and help her sell more copies. So today we're going to find out why Debra loves to write, why she chooses to self-publish this book. Why did she choose that method? And how was she able to do all of this only 9 months after publishing Undue Influences last year? So since her last book and this one was only a 9-month gap, which is pretty crazy. It's a lot of work. Well, as you all know out there, I like to talk to physicians that are doing new things. And I don't know, for some reason, I'm really into medical writing and writing that isn't medical. And today's guest has been on the show twice before, and she's released a new book called Beyond the Pillars of Salt. I got to get that in right at the beginning so I don't forget. And so with that, I want to welcome Dr. Debra Blaine. Hello.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me.
It's always fun. I don't know what it is. I think people that actually take writing beyond just a hobby or something and actually write something that gets published are awesome. I mean, that includes people that publish, I guess, scientific articles, but I like to read novels. I like mystery thrillers, things like that. So what you've been writing has been right up my alley. So it's going to be fun to talk about your new book today.
Thank you.
All right. So here we go. I'm going to really dig into that. We're going to learn as much as we can, not just about you, but because this third book has been published differently. That's one of the reasons I wanted to get you on today. But let me just say that I'm halfway through the book, and I don't know if we're going to be using video, but if we are, there's the cover of it. And I really am enjoying it. It does keep me moving forward. It's interesting. I've noticed when I read a mystery or a thriller or even a cop type of book, that the further I get in the book, the faster it goes. It's weird. It's like kind of as you get older, you move faster through time, and so that means it's keeping my interest. So, explain where this book came from, or after you tell us a little bit about yourself and your history being a writer and a physician.
Okay, so I've been practicing medicine for 33 years. I am looking for a permanent exit. I'm right now only working part-time. And I published my first book in 2019, which was a medical thriller. And my second book was actually came out less than a year ago, and it was a political thriller. And that one was called Undue Influences. And so this is the sequel to Undue Influences. And this one took me 9 months about to write, edit, and publish and release. So I'm really excited about that and that process going forward. But this book is, so the political thriller kind of focuses on what's happening to our society and how our minds are being manipulated in so many different ways, and how that's leading us towards extremism and towards not being able to really get along with each other, but perhaps it's serving some other interest, the political powers that be. And so what Beyond the Pillars of Salt does is it takes that scenario to one of the possible frightening conclusions. And so in Beyond the Pillars of Salt, we now have a society in the United States, which is where I live, where government is not elected anymore because no one believes the elections. So it's become despots who are ruling our country, and it's autocratic, and cruelty is sort of the norm, which, I think we've seen some of that. It's just a lot of violence. And on the other hand, there's also the planet, which has been neglected. The needs of Earth have been so neglected that between the storms and the shifting tectonic plates and the flooding in coastal areas, the Earth is kind of redefining itself, reclaiming itself, and it's not going to be so habitable for human life in the very near future. Now, all this takes place in the year 2032. Not so distant future. I really hope I'm totally wrong about all of this, but
Yeah.
the group of people, the group of humans that we get to know fairly intimately in Undue Influences, make their way to the mountains, and they find this little hiding place where they grow into a whole compound of people. And the story is about how they manage to survive. And if you haven't read it yet, I'll say if they manage to survive, but what they do, and how, not just how they manage to survive physically, but how they manage to survive as human beings. So how to not repeat the mistakes of the past, and where to go to find a place to thrive. So I don't know how far you are in the book. I don't want to completely give away the book, but there is this becomes this search for we cannot sustain ourselves on, or the planet Earth will not sustain us anymore. So we need to find another way to go. And so all of my books, I try to make them plausible. Like, no matter how outrageous it is, I try to make it something that you could actually go step by step and see how you could get there, given what we know today. So I did a lot of research. I don't know if you're up to all that part yet, but I did a lot of research about what's out there in space and what we could possibly aim for and how we could propose to get there, without, some magical, oh yeah, it's Star Trek, we just push a button and we're in warp speed. So and
yeah,
then there's
exactly.
yeah, so but there is definitely woven through that a sense of, of a person who is reminding us that this is the last chance. We have to get it right this time. And so the whole question for me became, so, not only, what does it mean to be better, more worthy, more noble human beings, but how do we get there? How do we find that? And, these are like really major questions that, I'm trying to just explore in a science fiction, dystopian fiction kind of world, and hope that my readers will play along with that idea too and think about it.
Couple of things I have to comment on there. So first, going back to the start of what you were saying, 9 months is like unreal, particularly when you consider that you were publishing in a completely different way, which we're going to talk about. So, I mean, because you had published the others in a different way that we've actually talked about before on the podcast, and I'll put links to our previous episodes. And the self-publishing, which is the route you took this time, is just that's a whole learning curve, and you're going to tell us about that. So that's one thing. Yes, I could tell in the reading of the book, and I do like, there's things like, my wife and I talk about movies and so forth, and the things I like science fiction. I like sometimes if they're using, time travel, which is, I don't think is in this book at all.
Yeah.
But the scientific background, I'm like, you must have done research, or you have a scientific background, of course, as a physician, which I think helps. So, and I like that, because people that, it's hard to fool another physician, when you're talking in scientific terms, because the lay public might not notice something. But so I gotta give you kudos for that. And so, why don't you just tell us, before we go too much further, where your website is, because I know that's one place they can get the book. So in case they don't listen to the end.
So, so my website is debrablaine.com. And you can also get there if you put in veryindiepress.com. And because that's part of my new avenue for publishing. But debrablaine.com will get you to my books on the first page, my coaching practice, which is primarily for physicians, but for anyone, then I have a coaching practice for writers, which is very exciting. And I have a blog, my bio, a mission statement, stuff like that.
Yes, it's laid out really well, and it's easy to get everything right there. So, all right. So you've told us about the book. You don't want to tell us too much. So like I said, I've gone about halfway through it, and yeah, you didn't spill any of the beans that I haven't, read through yet. So that's good to know. But I have really enjoyed it to this point, and it will be done very quickly. We did, schedule this interview rather suddenly, so that's my excuse for not being the really good host that has finished the book. But no, tell us about why and how you decided to publish the book the way you did.
So in the past, so, as I mentioned before, just really briefly, there's three ways, common ways to publish a book. You can go the traditional route, but you have to first get an agent, because unless you have an agent, you can't even approach a traditional publisher. That can take you anywhere from 1 to 2 years, unless you already have an agent. Then the agent has to find a publisher who's willing to publish your book. And then the publisher takes however long they want to take, can be a year, can be 2 years. They can release it when they want to release it, and they can tell you what to do with the book, which, chapters they don't like, or what new chapters to write in. It doesn't cost you anything. And they do usually give you an advance, fairly small, if you're not a well-known writer like Dan Brown or something. So that's number one. Number two is the hybrid. I kind of fell into the hybrid. Like I didn't even have a chance to think about whether I was going to start doing query letters. I was working full time at the time, and the hybrids, they charge you to do all the developmental editing, the copy editing, the proofreading. They do a cover design. They do everything you need to do. Get your ISBN numbers. They do everything that needs to be done. Plus they format and they platform the book. They tend to platform the book through Ingram Sparks, and which is the main company in this country that does that and prints. And then Ingram Sparks farms it out to everywhere else: Amazon, Apple, Barnes and Noble, whatever. So your books can be available anywhere. So I didn't want to wait that long, because my first book, Code Blue, it took 8 months to get it out when they promised it to me in 6. My second book, Undue Influences, they promised in 6. It took 11 months. And I just wasn't willing to do that, because I want to turn out the books faster, and because I try to make my books timely for what's going on in the current, today, this year.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to self-publish it. And so that meant, so I hired a couple of editors, 2 different editors. I went to Kirkus first, which is really known for their reviews. It's a very high quality organization, but they also have a separate arm that just does editing, cover designs, formatting, things like that. So you can go to Kirkus and say, hey, I want to self-publish my book, and they'll do everything for you that I actually ended up doing myself. So I got one editor from there, loved her, absolutely loved her. They promised me it would be finished within 15 business days.
Mm-hmm.
It was done in 2 weeks, including the weekends. And then I went to Fiverr, which is an online platform where you can get people to, who are interested in offering all kinds of different services. And I got another company that did a second edit, because I wanted to kind of double check it, and they did a proofread. And so now I had my edited manuscript, I found I think he's an amazing cover designer, Joe Montgomery. I got to plug him. And he just worked with me. He earned every penny. At one point, I sent him an email and I said, I know I'm probably your biggest PIA client, but I've really enjoyed working with you. And he wrote back to me and he said, oh no, this project's been a blast. And so I'm going to use him in the future. So I had a cover designer, but then there's all these other things you need to get, the little identifier numbers that are on your books, ISBN. So it's really not that hard. You look everything up online. Bowker does it. They're very friendly. You can get a human on the phone very easily. I bought ISBNs. I bought a barcode. Then so a friend of mine recommended this program called Vellum. And it's VELLUM, and it's a software. It only works with Macs. But then I put up there's a closed Facebook group for doctors, for women physician writers. It's a great group. And I put up a thing because I said, has anybody had experience with Vellum versus Atticus, which is another one. Atticus, you don't have to have a Mac. I do have a Mac. And everybody chimed in, no, Vellum. So Vellum is a little bit more expensive, but for $249. Oh, and plus Vellum gives you the software. Play around with it. If you like it and you want to use it, pay us. So it's
Nice.
it's not until you generate a file that you have to pay them. So once you pay them the $249, you now have a license to format unlimited paper and ebooks forever.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah. So I think it was money very well spent. So I took my manuscript and I'm like, I'm heretofore not been a very tech savvy person. I'm working on changing that. So I'm looking at it, it says upload file. I'm like, okay. And I clicked it. And it was amazing. In about 20 seconds, my manuscript appeared in book form.
Nice.
And it even, it labeled, each chapter. It gives you a table of contents if you have one, and it gives you just numbers if you're, just for the ebook, but not necessarily for the hardcover or the paperback. So, which you can do either one. It separated my copyright page. It separated my epilogue. It separated my title page. It knew all these things. And then you could add elements. So I could add my acknowledgement page, my dedication page, my about the author page. It even asks, if there's other books by this author. It really lays everything out for you so nicely. So I did that. And then I discussed, so I've learned a lot of things along the way. When I decided to upload, a friend of mine who recommended Vellum said, you can just send it to Ingram, or you can just send it to Amazon. If you send it there, they have the exclusive rights for distribution. So you can't send it, you can't necessarily send it to both if you just do one. But she said it's a pain in the butt, but she does it separately on every platform. And so I did. So I opened accounts with Apple, with Ingram, with Amazon, with Kobo. And so anything, all sales get deposited, the royalties get deposited directly into my account. It doesn't go through another publisher. And so then I just uploaded. I discovered something really interesting. When you upload to Amazon, the Kindle version, you don't have to publish yet. You can preview, and it will go through and do another proofread for you.
Wow.
Yeah, it's so cool. And it came up with it. It said 5 potential errors, and 4 of those was a word that I made up. So obviously, yeah, it's going to say, and so I said, just ignore those. And then there was one, I knew that it was the word trivial and the second I was missing. And I remember fixing that, but somehow I guess I didn't save it anyway. So I went back and I fixed it. You can preview on Amazon for your paperback as well. I think you can preview on Ingram as well. And then, you fill in your metadata and your price, and you just, it really was so much easier, calling Apple, iTunes Connect. I had some issues with they didn't like my tax ID number or something. And they get on the phone with you, like in 2 or 3 rings, you've got a human being. Even the U.S. Copyright Office, I had to call them. This was the day after Labor Day, and I think he partied too much Labor Day. He was a little bit cranky, but he helped me, and within 5 minutes of my picking up the phone to call, the problem was solved and he was off the phone. So I've just found, excuse me, the people in the publishing world are so friendly. They're just really easy to work with. And that's why I could do it so fast, because I had my own cover going, and I got it edited and I had the software. And so this is something that I'm offering now as a coach. If you have a book, I'm not an editor. I'm not going to edit your manuscript. I'm not a cover designer. I can't do your cover design, but I can sort of help guide you to where you can get that done. And then, we can talk about that. And then we can get on a Zoom meeting again, and I can upload your manuscript in front of you, share screen. You can see it. You can choose your font. You can choose your spacing. You can choose the size of your letters, the size of your book. Once you do that, it will tell you how many pages it is. And then you can have your cover designer create, it's called a mechanical. It has the back and the spine and all that, because it has to be a perfect fit. So, all these things that you don't really think about. But if you have a good cover designer, an experienced cover designer, they will know what you need and you'll be able to work with them. You don't want somebody to just make a picture unless you're only interested in ebook distribution. Ebook distribution, all you need is a picture. But
got it. So now when you're in Vellum and you're converting everything, do you add that cover and back and front cover at that point, or does that come like later in that whole publishing process?
So Vellum asks you for the cover.
Okay.
But they're only looking for the front cover, because for ebooks. Now for a print book, that's only certain places that are going to do a print book. So Apple only does ebooks. Amazon does both. So when you go to Amazon and you want to upload your book for print, it will ask for your manuscript, and then it will ask for your mechanical for the cover. So you have to upload that. There'll be a separate file that your cover designer will give you. And so once that's in, the same thing with Ingram, it's like the manuscript and the mechanical. And they're just separate files. But when Vellum produces files, it labels them. This is for this company, this company, this company. This company.
Nice. So it has it broken down by company. Nice. Okay. Yeah. So really, I happen to have a Mac, so I'm kind of in both worlds, PC and a Mac. But I would definitely keep that in mind if I ever decide to write a book, particularly this type. But boy, you've got this down to a science. This is very interesting. And man, this last one was 9 months. You're going to crank out one a year minimum, I think.
Well, we have a colleague who's been putting out 2 books a year now for a while.
Wow.
So actually, I think she did 4 books last year, but she's like, she's like so far ahead of me. But she's a little bit my guru. But
yeah, well, we have a couple of minutes here, so I want to ask you: if in your coaching, what if somebody said, "Yeah, I need help. I want to self-publish my book, but I also need a little bit of help in figuring out like what's the most efficient way for me to write my book." Like I just sit down and sometimes I get a few pages done and then I get distracted, or I try to squeeze it in between different parts of the day. What is sort of the short version of your advice if I were to ask you as my coach?
Yeah, so I've picked up a couple of clients who want to write. And so we meet, and I give them a package if they don't want to pay by the session. And the package, because it's writing, it's not like regular coaching where, it is coaching, but, I give them like 10 weeks or 8 weeks to use the package, even though they're paying like for 4 sessions. So if you want to take some extra time because you're on a roll writing and you don't want to get back to me yet, but so we talk about structure of books, methods to keep people interested, how to keep the reader hanging on, what you should start with. So, one of my clients had this great idea. She said, this is how I want to start the book. And I said, that is an awesome, amazing chapter, but make it chapter 2. Because that's not gonna pull the reader in, so, and we talk about structure and the things that are necessary and some of the elements of dialogue, and then, and my job is to keep them accountable. And when people pay for coaching, when they're paying for something, they tend to be more accountable. And then at the end, I tell people, I can't promise you that your manuscript will be accepted by an agent or a traditional publisher or a hybrid, but I can promise you that when you're done, if you choose to do self-publishing, I will do it with you. And then again, all I charge is for my time. And then they get the files and they set up their own accounts. I don't have anything to do with their earnings. And the other thing, so going through my former publisher, they only go through Ingram. So let's say a book is being sold by Amazon. Ingram takes their cut first, Amazon takes 40%.
Mm,
And you have to subtract the cost of printing, which, by the way, Amazon charges a full dollar less for the same book than Ingram does to
mm.
print. And then my publisher gets a fee, I'm sure. And then whatever's left over is called the royalties. And we split that 50-50. I get, I think, about 75 to $1.25, 75 cents to $1.25 a book. But when I publish the same book through Amazon, I mean, sorry, when I self-publish it, if it sells on Amazon, I get $5.86 a book.
Now,
So,
5 times the amount, more or less, 4 or 5 times the
yeah,
amount.
yeah,
So that's much more efficient in terms of generating some income, which I'm assuming you would love to do over time, generate more income with writing and less income from medical, which, I can relate to that quite a bit, as many of our listeners can. So probably not the quickest way to becoming a millionaire is to start writing, but if it's something you love and you're good at it, then why not pursue that and get paid for it? Just like everything else we talk about here. Do
right.
something you love, you're passionate about, you know how to do well, and you can get paid for.
Yeah, and you know me, John. I mean, it's for me, it's not even just about the writing. It's about I want to say something, and I feel like when people read an article or they hear the news or somebody gives them a self-help book or something, it goes in, it stays with them for a day, a week, a month, maybe, and it's gone. But when you think about your favorite books, you remember them from time to time, and
Oh
my
yeah.
hope is that people will, when they engage with a character, that it will affect them in a deeper, more emotional way that will leave more of a lasting impression, because our planet's in trouble. The people on our planet are in trouble. And this is kind of my way of doing medicine for the spirit.
Well,
I call
yeah.
it truth and fiction. That's my new thing. The truth hurts, but fiction guides gently.
Yeah. And in fact, most physicians that find something to do outside of seeing patients one-on-one end up helping patients indirectly or directly anyway, in whatever they're doing. And this is another good example. Um, let's see. I have one more question for you before I let you go. But before I do that question, I'm going to remind everybody the first place to stop is debrablaine.com. And Debra is DebraBlaine at the end of Blaine.com, right?
Yep.
And they can find everything there. If they want to go to Amazon directly, so be it. Look for your name there and they'll find the books. Okay. And really, if you're a writer or a fledgling writer, or want to learn how to publish, self-publish, then seek you out for coaching for that. Okay, here's my last question. So do you have any advice for clinicians who are basically stressed out and unhappy? And just general advice, because you're a coach, you're a trained coach. So what do you tell people when they reach out to you and say, man, I'm about ready to kill myself with this medical thing?
So really good question. So I think that we reframing the meaning of our lives changes the experience of our lives. So I think not defining ourselves strictly as clinicians, defining ourselves as more of a whole person, the things that we're doing in life, the goals that we have for ourselves, for our families, for people around us, for our patients. But what thinking about what legacy we want to leave, I think is really important. And when we explore ourselves outside of medicine, we become more satisfied. And I find that when I started to look at myself differently, when I started, my self-image changed, the world around me reacted to me differently. All of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden, they're not treating me like some cog in a machine, like, oh yeah, she's not going to listen to us. Instead of trying to like push me into that round hole when I'm a square peg, they just like, just okay, whatever. So I think it's just living life on my own terms a little more, and not listening to the message that this is the only thing you can do with your life, and this is who you are, and you have to stay here and just run around the hamster ring, and that's what you're good for. So don't listen to that. Explore who you are. And a lot of times when you find something you're interested in, it becomes a moneymaker. If you're passionate about something, and you start taking it, explore, following it where to its logical conclusions, you will make money at it, and your life will just be better. So
Excellent. I appreciate that a lot. And while you were talking about that, you had mentioned earlier about how the people you're working with are so nice, the editors and the
yeah.
different people. And it's because they understand and they appreciate the fact that there are people like you out there that are actually trying to write, and it's not easy, and it takes time, and it takes a lot of effort, and so they don't take you for granted, unlike some industries. I guess is what I bring that back to.
Shall they remain nameless?
Okay, I want to remind people too, by the way, from what I heard, one of the best things will help you out long term with something like this is after they read the book, you're all going to pick up the book, of course, every listener that's listening today, and they should leave a review after they finish reading it.
Yes, please, please. Because that's like, so there's a couple of things that work really well on Amazon. The more reviews you have, the more, when people click on the book. So Beyond the Pillars of Salt is just out. So there's not very many reviews. So sometimes people will click on it and say, oh, not that many people have looked at it. So they look away. So the reviews are really important for that. But also, the more reviews you have and the more sales you have, the more Amazon starts, when you get to a certain point, Amazon starts to promote the book itself.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't
It's a
have to
giant
worry
search
so much.
engine after all.
Right. So when it says, oh, these people are liking this book, or all these people are buying this book, oh yeah, maybe we should send it. Maybe more people will like it, because Amazon wants to make money. And
Right.
if it's doing well, they want it to do better, because that's better for Amazon.
Excellent. So we'll keep that in mind. And I guess I want to just thank you for coming on and telling all this. It was like a whirlwind, a lot of information, but that's what we're here. We're here to support people and teach them, and they can learn more by contacting you, of course. So thanks for coming on the show today, Debra. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, John. I always love talking to you.
We'll get you back on for your next book.
Okay. It's coming soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
For those of you who have thought about writing, whether it's nonfiction, medical writing, or a novel like Dr. Blaine's, I hope that you were inspired and encouraged today. Like anything you've done as a physician, if you break down new skills into smaller steps, you can enter almost any field. Your intellect, focus, and perseverance, combined with your passion, will turn a seemingly overwhelming new goal into reality. And that's why I wanted to bring Debra on today, because she's really done that in this niche that she's working in. And luckily, there are people like Debra, including Debra, who can help move you forward more quickly in whatever endeavor you desire. There's coaches and consultants out there. So if you'd like to purchase any of Debra's books or engage her coaching services, you can find her at debrablaine.com or at veryindiepress.com. They both point to her website. Yeah, she can help you with career coaching and specifically with coaching for writing and self-publishing. And in fact, she can walk you through self-publishing your book if you've already written it. If you enjoy novels, I encourage you to read Debra's books and leave a review on Amazon. So that's why, as I said at the beginning, I would suggest go ahead and read her most recent book. It's very engaging, as you heard during our interview. And then leave a review. In fact, I'll probably send an email out to any of you on my list to remind you in about a week or so to leave a review of the book, because it just helps her sell more books now when there are reviews. That's a big help, that as much as just the raw numbers that are being sold, which is also tends to be self-sustaining. All right, so I'll put the links that were mentioned today in the show notes, and you can find those at nonclinicalphysicians.com/success by writing. Remember, every time we use a pretty link like that in the show notes, those words are always separated by hyphens. So it's nonclinicalphysicians.com/success by writing. What else? Before we go, I should remind you about NewScript. It's a community of clinicians writing a new script for their careers and their lives. It's still accepting new members. It probably always will be. The easiest way to find that and check it out and subscribe is go to nonclinicalphysicians.com/new script. The monthly fee is still very low, below $5, and we've gotten over 500 members. And so we're in the process of bumping up the monthly subscription very soon. So you have maybe a few weeks before that happens. So go ahead and sign up now at nonclinicalphysicians.com/new script, or you can go to newscript.app, either one. Remember, too, that this podcast is made possible by the support of the University of Tennessee Physician Executive MBA program. And you can learn more about that at nonclinicalphysicians.com, physician MBA. Oh, and by the way, I have had some donations that I mentioned at the beginning of this episode. So that's also helping me, as well as the sponsorship, which I hope to continue. That has to be renewed every year, so you never know. Some of the links that I refer you to and that you'll find in the show notes are affiliate links. That means I get a payment from the seller if you purchase using my link, although the cost is exactly the same either way. And the opinions expressed here are mine and my guests. And while the information provided in the podcast is true and accurate to the best of my knowledge, there's no guarantee that using those methods will lead to success in your career, life, business. So always consult an attorney, accountant, a career counselor, or strategist before making any major decision about your career. So I hope to see you right here next Tuesday morning on the next episode of the Physician Non-Clinical Careers podcast, and in the YouTube channel, which is starting to grow. So thanks. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.